So, okay. So trial master file. So Chris was suggesting you your first job, but you ultimately want to be a CRA.
I want to be, if I can get there right away, that'll be perfect for me.
So for you, it's gonna be a means to an end. The end is the CRA. You like to travel.
I like to travel.
Okay, so there's a couple things you can do. Okay, and being in California, you probably are benefit a little bit more from where you are. Okay, so there's CRC, which is a coordinator. Okay, that's like Monica.
Okay.
That's like Rosario. That you work at the site.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have here you have like the CRO world where you can be an in-house CRA, not a CRA, an in-house CRA. And then you have a traditional CRA. Do you know the difference? What do those people do? What are the differences between those two?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. The in-house works for the CRA doesn't have to work for that particular CRO, right?
Yes. So they all work for the CRO.
Oh, both of them do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, one one goes to different sites and the other one is based in the company.
Correct. So which one is that?
The in-house is in-house, and then the CRA is the one who's allocated to different sites.
Yes. And what makes this confusing is that most CRA positions are home-based.
And that's the one I want.
Yeah, so it's the same word. People get this confused, home-based with in-house.
Okay.
It's not the same.
Okay.
Okay. So you're right. These people, this is the job you want to target at your stage. Okay. They assist the CRAs.
Okay.
They will. Different CROs are different, and by the way, these people can also work for the sponsor directly. That's increasingly more common now, but there's still the majority of them are still at CROs.
Okay.
Okay, so the in-house CRAs, they help the CRAs with things like logistics for the site, like sending lab kits, making sure the site has IP, collecting. They're really involved at the start of a study.
Okay.
So study startup. Okay.
Okay.
What do you know about study startup?
Finding the site, doing the site initiation.
Okay, so it's after SSV.
Oh, it's after. Okay.
So that's site selection. Okay, but it's before SIV.
Okay.
You have a bunch of things that needs to be done, right?
Okay.
And this period can take months. And the CRA is not even involved until the SIV, usually.
Okay.
So in this whole time, usually for the site selection visit, you have another CRA that does just site selection visits. That's the more entry-level CRAs do that.
Okay.
Okay, but the in-house CRAs, once a site is selected, the in-house CRAs send all the regulatory document, the startup regulatory, right? The 1572. Sometimes they call these people startup specialists as well.
Now, do they go to sites or they just...
No, they don't go to sites.
Okay, that's what the CRA does.
Yeah, so you're in-house here. That means you go to the actual CRO headquarter offices. Okay, now sometimes the startup specialist and the in-house CRAs are the same position.
Okay.
And other times, like at bigger CROs, they're different. So you have startup specialists, all they do is startup regulatory primarily, right? What are those things? What's some of the startup regulatory? What's some of the startup regulatory?
Oh, the protocol.
Okay.
The IRB documentation and paperwork.
Yep, IRB questionnaire / approval.
In this case, would they also be responsible for material for advertising, review of?
Yeah, they'll give the IRB will give the
We'll give it to them.
advertising material.
Okay. But they now, do they give it to them and they provide it to the CRA?
No, so the CRA won't get involved until the SIP.
Okay.
So all these things need to be done
Okay.
before the real CRA is even assigned to the site.
Okay.
Okay.
So the forms,
It's a very important one.
so the forms, all the forms to do with informed consent and all that,
Yeah.
it's all part of.
ICF template, yeah, that has to be IRB approved also.
Okay.
But what else? There's regulatory, whole bunch of regulatory. The protocol, there's a protocol signature page. But what's the most important form of all regulatory?
The 1572.
There you go. Yeah, so that one. And then there's a financial
disclosure,
form,
yes.
right? And then there's the training log will get done by the real CRA at the SIV.
Okay.
And then the contract and budget, but usually the in-house CRA or the startup specialist don't do contract and budget. It's usually a separate department. Okay, so that's what an in-house CRA does with a startup. Now, during the study, then an in-house CRA will collect and sometimes maintain the trial master file. Okay, and that's what we're getting into. So we just, every site has a regulatory binder, right? And that regulatory binder has all these things, which are called the essential documents, but it also has other things like SAE, SUSAR, right? What else does the regulatory binder have?
The forms?
It has like templates of the forms,
right.
yeah. They have the CVs of all the staff. They have, what else is in the regulatory binder? Protocol deviation log. That's the one you couldn't find.
Yes, that's the one I couldn't find.
Screening enrollment log. So they have all these logs and all these things need to be maintained. Like in that report and the regulatory section, it's going to show you everything. We can go to it now if you want, the regulatory section. And then I'll explain what's a trial master file because it's easier. Once you know what a regulatory binder is, it's a lot easier to understand what a trial master file is.
Okay, there you go.
Trial master file. TMF.
TMF.
Don't confuse it with CTMS.
That is what I confused
I know,
it
because
with.
they're similar letters. CTMS is like it's a management system. Sometimes sites use it, sometimes CROs use it to track the progress of the study. Okay, has nothing to do with regulatory documents.
That's what
It's just scheduling, budgets, what studies you have, who's going, when, what. For the case of a CRO, when do the monitors have to go back? For the case of a site, when do the patients come back? Right, so that's a CTMS, clinical trial management system. A trial master file is maintained by the CRO or the sponsor. It's called a TMF if it's a physical copy. If it's electronic, it's called a ETMF for electronic trial. Nowadays, they're electronic trial master file. And we use one in our CRA Academy. Do you know what it is?
Was that the EDC?
No. No, EDC is different.
Is different?
Oh yeah. EDC. See, not to confuse with all these things.
Okay.
No,
Because I'm thinking of.
We used another We used another platform. There's only 3 we used. EDC is wrong. 2 more. Not the any meeting, because that's not a CTMS. There's only 1 more thing we use. Intralinks. That is a trial master file.
Intralinks, yes.
That's why we use it. There's many.
And it's very helpful too.
Good. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to use. We understand, but we use it because it's actually used as a trial master file.
So you're giving us hands-on.
Yeah. That way, when you interview, you can talk about that too.
It's actually very helpful.
Yeah, that's what we thought too. But I know it's like not the easiest thing to use. It would have been much easier to buy a software that has nothing to do with research and just put everything there. But it's not. You're not using a TMF. So, unlike our interlinks where our folders are different things, in the trial master file, what you have is a copy, especially in an eTMF like interlinks. It's a copy of every site's regulatory binder in here. So if a study has like 30 sites, okay, you're gonna have all 30 reg binders or investigator site files. It's the same thing.
Same thing.
All in here, copies. Okay. So at the beginning of a study, the startup specialist is uploading all these things in here. The sites don't get access to this. This is just for the sponsor and the CRO. So you have to organize it with folders, right? Like you'll have site A, site B, and then within that folder you're gonna have like 1572, right? Subfolders, like how many versions, protocol amendments, all the different protocol. Like you just go to infinity, you can go, right? But that's what a trial master file is. And that's a position you can get. A lot of our students went on to get that at different companies. They're hiring a lot now, especially the eTMF, because it used to be trial master file was a physical copy of all these things at the CRO headquarters, and I think they still do that, but now it's moving all electronic. So the originals stay at the site. And what they used to do is the site would sign like 2 originals of the 1572. One would stay at the site, one would go to the sponsor. And now some of them still do that, but this is taking over the eTMF. And that's because of these people, in-house and startup. That's all they do pretty much. Okay, and then they in-house is like a support staff for the CRA. Like they can send the follow-up letters, although the CRA is supposed to send it, but they can help with those kind of things.
And but never does the CRA ever ask them to go when they're unable to go somewhere?
No, like to join them on a co-monitoring visit? No. Unless the management approved this in-house CRA to be trained to be a CRA, which is why you should get this job. Okay, because you do that for a few years. You do that for 1 year. Or this trial master file for 1 year. When they start running out of CRAs, they're gonna go to from within. Right? They'd rather work with you than somebody they don't know.
So you're essentially working a 9-to-5 job?
Yeah, as an in-house CRA, yeah. As a traditional CRA, definitely not. I mean, you're flying at different times. But you're getting paid usually from door to door, like from when you leave your house
to when you
get there, unless you're on salary. There's many CRAs that are on salary, so it doesn't matter how many site visits they do a month, they get paid the same. But they tend to work those ones a lot.
That's what it's always when you're salaried, you work harder. You work more.
You work more. Now, EDC, that's electronic data capture. That's Bioclinica. And sometimes these in-house CRAs look at the EDC to help, like to issue queries or like simple queries, like things that the CRA maybe doesn't have time to do. And again, every CRO is different. Like with us, with the SCS, these in-house CRAs really do everything because there's only 2 CRAs in my CRO, and that's me and Chris. Me and Chris. Everyone else, all the other students that end up interning with us, they do in-house stuff. Especially for this new cancer project that's going to start. Like we have 3 assigned to do EDC, eTMF. Vince is one of them from the academy. So EDC, eTMF, all this stuff too, like startup regulatory. So that's the differences between those things. All right. Now, let's go through your report and see what.
So remember I told you I couldn't find my subject screening enrollment log, and I couldn't find the protocol deviation violation log, but there was documentation. Except I didn't have the log.
So this is a common finding. So what do you do if you're a CRA and you're going through the regulatory binder, we'll do job interview questions now. All right, but you're gonna know much more than what an in-house CRA or a trial master file specialist knows, based on these interviews that we're giving you, like these interview preps we're doing. You're not even expected to know that as an in-house CRA or a trial master file or a coordinator. Which, by the way, we didn't even get into the coordinators, but that's also a good stepping stone to CRA.
Okay.
Right? A lot of CROs are hiring CRCs with no CRA experience.
Okay.
As long as they have like 5 years of coordinating experience,
okay,
they get hired, or even 2, depends on your background. But I think it's still easier as an in-house CRA or a trial master file.
Okay.
And you get paid slightly more.
For the...
Yeah, now some coordinators get paid a lot.
Depending on the
It
site.
depends on their experience, the site, how successful the site is that they're working at, how busy they are, what else they're doing. A lot of times coordinators do perform duties and have responsibilities that are very complementary to what CRAs do. So you'll see some coordinators doing quality assurance for their site. Well, when you're quality assurance, you're pretty much doing what a CRA does, right? So those ones get an easier time getting hired as CRAs. So that's how the coordinator fits into it. But yeah, what do you do? Like, this is a mock interview, but what do you do if you go to the site you're monitoring, or not even monitoring? Maybe let's cater it towards a trial master file interview. Okay, you notice that site A is missing their deviation log. So what would you do as a CRA, and then what would you do as that trial master file person?
Issue a query. Is it?
No.
Is it? You know, one thing when we learned that you put notes, I always think, what if it gets lost?
Where?
If you stick a little,
like
they said sticky notes. That Shanae told us you can just put a sticky note there for the.
But the sticky note is just to show the site, like to alert the site. You're also putting that same query or action item. It's called action item. It's a query if it's in the EDC, all right? But if it's something like regulatory, you can't query it in the EDC.
Okay.
So it's an action item. So you do a sticky note, you put it where it's missing, and then you write it in your report. No, in your report, you will write it. CRA observed that deviation log was missing. CRA issued an action item for site to resolve.
Okay.
You also put that in your follow-up letter.
Okay.
So it's not like if that sticky gets lost, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The site's going to get their follow-up letter. This is why you have to document everything in your report, because you're not going to remember.
Okay.
If you're just going off of sticky notes and you drop one and you didn't write it down, you know, so I do this as I go. I write my report as I go. As soon as I find something, even the small thing like those, write it in the report. And then as long as it's all in the report, you can formulate a follow-up letter after. But your report has to get approved first by your lead CRA. Okay.
Question, for the trial master, it's the same thing? You write a report?
No. For trial master file, they have their own forms, like internal. But usually these people don't interact with the sites unless they allow them to. So there are some in-house CRAs that do interact with sites. Like they'll email and say, hey, we're missing this, right? We have our in-house CRAs do that too. Hey, we're missing this. Please upload it, or please email it to me so I can put it in the trial master file, right? So that's what you would do as a trial master file person. You would follow your internal process, right? Like in our case, it's you are allowed to contact the site.
Yes. But
in some CROs, you have to contact your CRA.
Okay.
And some, it's either you're allowed to contact the site or you have to go through your own internal process.
Okay.
Every CRO is different.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I like to just have them do it because it reduces time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's how a lot of people get confused with these things. TMF, CTMS, ETMF. They sound the same, but they're very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So what else did you find there? These are all good interview questions.
Okay. I didn't get to find the.
I got one for you.
1572.
Yeah, while you're looking for that, I'll go through with one of these. So you didn't find the 1572?
Well, remember you came and I was now trying to quickly. I didn't see the 1572.
Uh-oh. That'd be a big problem.
And that is the most important document.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
I got an interview question. So what do you do if you're monitoring or you're a QA? Let's say you're a QA specialist. Same thing. Okay? But your interviews is going to be more, they're going to expect you to know more generic stuff and not so tactical CRA, right? Because it's not, CRA is not going to be on your resume. It's going to be quality assurance. Okay, so what do you do if you're at a site and you notice that the site has a new staff member added to the 1572? What's the next steps to make sure that everything else is okay?
First of all, they're supposed to have a log.
Okay, what log?
The
I'll spell it.
Delegation log. Yeah, I just blanked out. Delegation log.
Delegation of duties.
Yes.
Or sometimes they're called delegation of authorities. Same thing.
Yeah. So that person's supposed to be on there.
On there, correct. But what else do you need? Look at all these things.
Yes, the CV.
CV, license.
The question.
What about GCP? Training.
The training, yes. In this case, depending on that's what I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
Financial.
Yeah. Anyone on the 1572, okay, if they're on box 6, they need to sign this. Okay. Now, not everyone on the delegation log will be on the 1572. Like, you don't always have to put coordinators. Increasingly, they want the coordinators on there. But, like, let's say, for example, a research assistant. Or, like, who you saw today, Kobe. He's an assistant of ours. But he's not on any 1572. But he's on the delegation log.
Yes.
Right? But that means he doesn't need this. FDF. Okay, he just needs to be on here. I need a CV. I need GCP. If he's doing labs, I need IATA, right? You have that too, IATA.
Yes.
Okay, he needs to also have protocol training.
Absolutely.
So that's another log.
The training log. Yes.
Did you see that in there, in the rec binder?
I saw the training log.
Okay. So anyone on this thing needs to sign this.
We had a couple deviations that required retraining.
You see?
In that binder.
And sometimes they'll have the CRA retrain the sites for things. Like I'm involved in a project and the sponsor wants me to retrain the site every time I go on a certain procedure because they kept making mistakes. So now I have to retrain them every time I go, and it's very redundant, but we document it in the log. I tell the PI and the coordinator, hey, just a reminder. That's it. It could be 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. And then they sign it.
Yeah. Now at the SIV, the protocol training, the initial protocol training, where everyone starts to sign all these things, will take like 45 minutes to an hour. Because you're going through the whole protocol with the PI, all the staff, and then everyone's going to sign these things, right? What else did you find? So
the 1572, if it's not in there, then of course you write it on the report.
Yeah.
And then this is if you're a CRA, and then you send the query.
Oh,
but then you're not.
It would be an action item.
Yeah. What was I gonna tell you? What was I gonna say? That has to be in there before anything happens.
I mean, it needs to be filed with the FDA.
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to SIV.
So if it's yes,
they won't even
yes,
activate the site
that's okay.
if they don't have
Okay,
that.
that's what I'm trying to make sure that if they don't have it, nothing happens
Oh yeah,
until the
that has to be in here in the trial master file. Sponsor sends that to the FDA. Okay, the site should put that in the regulatory binder. Sometimes sites misfile things,
yes.
but you still have a trial master file.
Mm-hmm.
So if a site, let's say a site lost the 1572, I mean, they would have to put a note to file that they lost it. It's not, it's bad, it's not good, but the sponsor still has a copy. Okay. And sometimes they'll have them, like, let's say they added a new staff member. So their previous version of the 1572 only had 5 staff members, and the new one had 6, but the new one is lost. So now their most recent version they have is only with 5 people. They would have to do it again.
Yes.
Okay, and note to file why it's duplicate, and then the sponsor would have that same note to file in their trial master file.
Okay.
In case the FDA ever asks why do you have 2 1572s, they're the same but different dates.
Yes.
You'll explain that it'll be explained there. Now, what do you do if there's a protocol amendment? Protocol amendment, all these people get involved again.
Okay.
Not so much startup, but in-house CRA coordinator amendment. Protocol amendment.
Back to the training log.
Yep, that's the first thing you'll do. So if you're a CRA and since your previous monitoring visit, there's been an amendment, you're gonna make sure that all staff on this delegation log were trained on the training log. If that's, hopefully the site did it themselves. If they didn't, you can either issue an action item for them to complete it prior to your next visit, or if you have time, you do it yourself. Or if your lead CRA is emphasizing that you should get it done, and your lead CRA is going to let you know before you monitor what you should focus on. Like if there's been an amendment and they need a training, they will let you know if it's urgent that you train them. Otherwise, it's kind of at your own discretion. But again, every CRO is different, so the SOPs will vary from different CROs. And they change too. So your lead CRA is going to kind of let you know as the main CRA what your focus should be. But for me, it's always been, I make sure that it's there, and if not, I'll create one and train everybody. Okay. Same thing with a new staff member. They got to get trained also. What else did you find there?
I had a question about the IP.
Okay.
The site did have an adequate supply. All this was yes, except when I got to 36, I now got confused. What are emergency code break envelopes? How do you make sure they're intact?
Do you know what those are?
No.
Okay, so that's to break the blind. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, because it's double blind. So let's say a patient, there's a hospital right there, right? An ER. Let's say one of our patients comes in here on a study and then somehow ends up in that ER later. Maybe they fainted. Okay. Now the ER doctor has nothing to do with this study. Doesn't even know. But if you find out they're in a study, they're going to call the site and try to find out what medication the patient was on. And only the PI can reveal that code. But once they do, the patient can't continue. But it's for the patient's safety, basically. And as a CRA, you'll never really look inside it, but you'll just see that it's sealed. It's there, it's sealed. The worst thing you want to happen is something happens and then the site can't find it. Like that's, the patient is in the ER. You need to be able to access it right away. Usually those are kept with the IP. Like the same place where the IP is kept. That way it's there.
It's right there.
You don't want to have it like in boxes of books and then look for it when they really need it.
And then of course the next question is, has there been a break in the code? And then of course
that's what that would be.
Would that be would you go and put it under protocol deviation or no? Or
That's actually a good question.
And it's also an adverse event.
Oh, that would be
event.
SAE. Yeah, serious
SAE.
adverse
Okay.
event. As far as a deviation, that's a very good question. I think it would be.
Okay.
I think it would.
And then
That's a really good one. Actually, I never even thought about that because it's never happened.
oh, I saw this with Chris, the PK sample, clinical lab. I remember that.
Okay,
With,
PK.
Yeah, with Chris, and that has a separate
Pharmacokinetic, yeah.
and it has a separate authorization. I mean, consent.
There's sometimes separate consents for like genetics, right? PK.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes there's caregiver consent forms.
Okay.
Like sometimes, especially for Alzheimer's study, you need like a caregiver.
Yes.
Okay, so they have to consent too because the patient is not maybe able to think for themselves, or would that be a legally authorized representative? But so that's a good question too in an Alzheimer's study because you're going to have Alzheimer's experience on your CV now. Okay, what's a legally authorized representative? What's a LAR? Let's say the patient is conserved. It's an Alzheimer's study. Let's say you come in with your grandma, okay, and she's the patient, you're the caregiver, but you're her conservator. Can she sign the consent form or can you sign it? How does that work?
I would have to sign it.
Oh, good. What's the process? Yeah. So you would sign it as the patient, but for the patient themselves, if they do have a legally authorized representative, there's a thing called assent.
Okay.
Okay. So there is still a place for them to sign that they acknowledge. They also use it for pediatric studies, like when the parents sign for the kid. But the child, they'll usually have a cartoon or something like a 2-minute cartoon to explain in their way of understanding what they're getting involved in.
Yes.
And they have to agree it's assent.
Yeah.
But it's not consent. They're not going through the whole thing, right? But they're aware of what's going on.
Okay.
So you usually need both of those for LARs. There's also the caregiver consent form. The caregiver could be the same person. Okay. And then there's the PK, like genetic samples, PK samples. Those are always optional sub-studies, but they'll have separate forms for that too. Yeah, that's a good one.
I was kind of confused with that bipolar disorder history. I mean, this is just an aside.
Oh,
because it was results from the study.
Yeah.
Because it said
I remember that issue.
The patient was on medication for bipolar.
Yes.
And then Dr. Chu said the medical records said it was diagnosed by somebody else. It was the incorrect diagnosis. And then he said the patient doesn't have the subject. I keep saying patient because I was working in a doctor's office. But the subject didn't have bipolar. So in that case, I know they did have a protocol deviation to explain everything. I saw that they went back and forth with the medical monitor, and but then at the end of the day, how do you really assess? Okay, that means if he's not bipolar, he'd have to be taking off those meds, right?
Right.
So he would have to have a psychiatrist do that.
Right.
And then you'd have to update the con meds.
Yes.
To show that you've discontinued that particular medication.
And also, is it bipolar or was it just symptoms of mania or depression that are actually, should those be adverse events or part of medical history? It gets very tricky.
So what happens in that case?
It's between the PI and the medical monitor.
Okay, the medical monitor will make that final decision.
But the PI can argue back and forth. Like that one, we spent a year arguing with them.
Okay.
Because the medical monitor, you know, they're let's say it's a psychiatry study, okay? The medical monitor will typically be a psychiatrist so that they can communicate with the PIs better. But these medical monitors are usually academics, and they're not actively involved in treating these patients. So in the real world, and you worked in the clinical setting. I mean, patients are given medications off label all the time, right? Like we have in Alzheimer's, we get agitation, so we prescribe mood stabilizers. But in the world of a researcher, if you see that, and it's for an Alzheimer's study, but you see a mood stabilizer, you're not questioning, did this patient have an adverse event? Are they bipolar? In addition to being someone with Alzheimer's? Or is it part of medical history? You have to figure out, and the PI really has to figure out. And you can have, I just had a conversation with a PI when I was monitoring about this. It was for an Alzheimer's study, and it was about agitation. And the patient even had some symptoms of being paranoid and seeing things. Well, is that adverse event? Because I'm just seeing that. Or is it part of medical history? Or is it even like exclusionary for the study?
That's what I was thinking with the bipolar, that, but then he decided, the medical monitor said he could continue with the study, so I guess.
Yeah, because they're just, what they're doing is they're trying to package it for the FDA. If the FDA sees it, they want to see something clean. But in the real world, things are not that clean.
Yeah, it's a gray area.
Yeah, it's all gray area. So their sponsors doing what they've got to do to package it to make it look clean. But in the real world, you have, these real world use cases for these drugs. It doesn't mean someone's bipolar if you're giving them lithium.
Exactly.
Right? Now, does that mean, like, I know many people who take microdose of lithium. I took, it's good for keeping you calm, right? Doesn't mean I'm bipolar. But if I were in a study and I told them that, they would question, is this person bipolar? Is this a AE? Or is it just part of medical history? Or is he just supplementing and doesn't need it? Right? Like prophylactic.
Okay.
It gets confusing.
It's very, especially with medical history.
And this is why they want CRAs. They won't just hire a CRA.
Yeah, because that inclusion exclusion criteria is just so. It's not an exact science, and it's you get so confused as to are they in, are they out.
It's all about how you document and how you present it to the FDA, and the medical monitors are just doing their job. But so are we, and you have a disconnect. And that happens all the time. Okay. And that's why they like RNs to be serious.
Yes, because they already
know what this. It's easier to train on the research than it is on the medicine in some aspects.
Most times the nurses are doing the doctor's jobs. The doctor just comes and signs and dates, and he's done.
Their work was done during med school.
I worked with the surgeon who said, "Oh, why don't you write the note?" And I said, "I never went to med school." So you write the note, and I'll file it for you.
They did?
He looked at me, and then he went and wrote it. And then, because I like documentation. We had a couple of lawsuits where the attorney turned to me and said, "Wow, you actually documented that?" And I said, "I'm just in the school of document to save everybody." And
you would make a good CRA.
And then ever since then, he'll be asking me, "Do I want to write the note?" No, I don't. I never went to med school. And I don't make the kind of money you make.
Yeah, you don't want to get in trouble with that.
He just used to laugh. And it's so funny. At the end of the day, they had to send him, they restrained his license. I had to send him back to school.
Yeah.
He had to go to San Diego for a few months to get it off his license.
Suspended, yeah.
Yeah, because he didn't document right in the hospital when he did the surgery. So
you can't mess around with these kind of
things.
He
has, and I always used to stop this habit. You scribble, you scratch, you go right. That is where they got him. He did the wrong side, and then he went and scribbled and put the right side. That's a no-no. The hospital had already told them, put a line through initial,
just like in research,
or and then they will retype the report. But he preferred to go and change everything. What was the good news was that the side that he did perform the surgery on wasn't tested, but that was the side that had the problem. That was
Ah,
where if he hadn't touched that side, patient would have died. So he was actually he was supposed to perform surgery on the left side. He ended up accidentally doing it on the
no
right side.
way.
Yes.
Nobody told him?
I don't know, but a lot.
Wow.
But then nowadays, there's so much stuff going on with making sure that the nurses will ask you what you're in for, and then before you have the surgery, they ask. So at every point in time, we now have
It's
safeguards
redundancy. Yeah.
to make sure that those kind of things don't happen. But that was like years ago,
Was
where
that here in California?
in California,
Wow.
yeah. But
It's the same thing
of
here.
course, the family sued.
Of course.
But then when it was explained, they're like, well, it was the principle of it that he did the wrong side surgery. But
Wow.
thank you, doctor, for for taking care of it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And research the same thing. Like you'll see doctors scribbling notes. As a CRA, I've had this problem with a couple of my sites. Like, I'll literally read the PI's progress note and it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like what am I gonna get out from that?
Mm-hmm.
The coordinator writes it a little bit better, so I can actually read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten to the point where I don't even read, and I've told the site, the PI, but I've documented it, so I'm okay, like I'm covered. But I told him, you gotta write better.
Doctors don't.
They're not gonna do it, so I gotta rely on the coordinator's notes.
Yeah, doctors don't, and that's what. Because even with when they dictate, you see so many blanks because they can't understand what the doctor is saying. Because some of the doctors have accents, and they can't just transcribe it, so they have to go back in and write it in, and then send it back to complete it. Getting the doctor to now sit down and fill in the blanks is another problem.
Yeah.
They never have time for you.
No, they're not going to do that.
So,
what else do you find?
I told you about on the IP in the IP section for the visit of 9th May 2016, there's something very confusing that he answered no.
Who answered no?
The was regarding I think it's the study coordinator. Somebody answered no. The question they answered no. Oh, I thought I was gonna go pull it for you.
But accountability is another thing.
96. Okay, then they said 96. Something to do with 96. Somewhere they wrote 96% compliance, and then somewhere else they went and wrote 100% compliance in the same note.
On the same note.
Yes.
That's a problem.
So and based on what was returned and what was taken, you knew that it wasn't 100%.
Yeah. So you, as the CRA in that case, would have to go count the pills from that visit and determine if it was 100 or 96 or maybe something else. Maybe the site doesn't know how to do math. Right? You would go, and I would go ask the coordinator to bring me that bottle, the unused medication that was returned for that visit, and I would count. And I would do the math myself. Because how many, if they're supposed to take one pill a day, and they had 14 days since their last visit, so they should have taken 14 pills. And if it's a pill bottle of 30, they should have returned 16. Now, if they returned 20 or 13, I guess they'd still be 96% compliant. But, or I don't know the math, but it could be plus or minus. Every protocol allows a certain compliance percentage. Okay, so they understand that not everyone's going to be 100% compliant.
Absolutely.
But it mandates to maintain a certain level of compliance. Usually it's 85%, meaning over or under compliant. Okay, but the site's still supposed to re-educate the patient every single time on the importance of being compliant. They got to document that.
Yeah, you in that binder they did that.
They did.
Yeah, good. It's just the note was confusing. They wrote both numbers at in the same note.
Yeah.
So then it would be like, okay, but
somebody's probably used to
100%.
Yeah, someone's probably used to just writing that a lot, and they realized that it wasn't actually 100. But that's, as a CRA, that's something you have to find, because that goes in the EDC too. Usually that goes in the EDC. How many pills returned, and then the EDC will do the math on the compliance. So it has to be SDV versus SDR. You know the difference between SDV and SDR? Source data review
and
source data verification. You've got SDV. So this is good for your interview.
Yes.
Because you're doing both of these, okay, while you're interning. Especially when you go at San Bernardino.
Yes.
SDV, source data verification. Okay.
And source data review.
SDR, source data review. So they're kind of the same, but they're really different. So this is checking the source with the EDC, which you didn't do yet today.
Yes.
You did it in the class.
In class.
You didn't do it today. Okay. What you did today was SDR, source data review.
Okay.
This goes more in depth. Like you look at the protocol. For example, SDV, if you can do SDV without even knowing the protocol. And you won't even know if something's a deviation. For example, if somebody's BMI is a 35, and they only want people under 35 BMI to enroll, but you don't know that because you're only doing SDV. So you're seeing, okay, they're putting the right weight and the right height in the EDC as it's on paper. So the EDC checks out as being okay.
So it won't give you the BMI? There won't be a section under inclusion exclusion where they'll put the BMI?
Yes, there will be. But if you just look at the source and the EDC without looking at anything else, and the EDC doesn't auto query, sometimes they're smart enough to say this is exclusion. But if it's not, there could be other things, like an excluded medication. Okay, if all you're doing is SDV and then looking at the EDC and saying it's correct, without looking at the source data, like looking at the protocol, looking between the lines. So that's what SDR is. It's looking between the lines, not just whether it's written on the paper and then put in the database, but is what's written following the protocol and following GCP. So you're doing both of those as QA. So that's when you go interview, that's why you need to focus on those
I
two
thought
things.
it was the same.
We'll put that on your CV.
I thought it was synonymous.
No. No. I used to think so too, but I knew the concept, but I didn't know how to explain
I'm putting it on my resume.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do that. You'll send me your resume later.
Yes, I will. I was asking you about this one. I guess I'd have to show it to you for you to see what I was talking about. The visit was dated February 22nd, 2016. In there's a note saying that they reconsented the subject on March 4, 2016. So how can you have a future date in a note? Shouldn't that be a separate note?
They probably said they will be reconsented.
No, it said was consented, reconsented. So maybe it's a semantics.
Future date. It could have been semantics.
Yeah, because that becomes confusing because you're in February. How could you have reconsented somebody in March when you're just in February? Yeah,
it could have been just the sentence structure. I mean, that's another thing you gotta, I would action item that as a CRA. Also, when a protocol's amended, okay, usually the informed consent is amended too.
Yes.
And so then all the subjects need to re-sign the new one. And there's, in the reg binder, an ICF log, informed consent log. Next to the screening log, there's also an informed consent log. It shows you every subject and every version of the consent and which ones they signed. So the subject, when they're a new screening, they only sign the most recent informed consent. They don't have to sign all the old ones.
Yes.
But if they're in the study and the new one comes up, they have to now sign the new one.
Yeah.
And it could be at their next visit. It's not an emergency that they come in. It could be at their next visit. Technically, the site is supposed to reconsent them at their next visit.
But they did have a new one, so they did do that.
Okay.
Except the note was just, I mean, if in March they did reconsent.
Okay.
Yeah. But the thing is, in that
So
particular
they did
note,
what it said on the note, but the note
it's
was like future.
you know how when you do something like that, it seems as if you are somebody who wouldn't know would think that they're making these things up after the fact and then dating it prior. So that's how you would raise a concern of fraud.
That's right.
That you're making stuff up and not trying, and then you're getting confused. So I think it's always best to just do something like that. All they had to do was just note to file, maybe, or
I always do note to file.
yeah,
or
to explain that okay, we reconcile, and then it will be on the log anyway.
Yeah.
So
if it's on the log, I know some sites use trackers, informed consent trackers. So they'll have like a spreadsheet, and they'll print it out and put it in the rec binder. But yeah, things like that as a CRA, if you catch it, that's definitely something you have to mention in your report, and maybe the site can clarify, what they meant by that. Because you know, like today's August 22nd. Okay, let's say you're my patient. Okay, you're here for a visit. We finished, and now I'm scheduling your next visit for September 22nd. So I can write in my note, subject will reconsent at her next visit, which is scheduled. So it could be, but again, as a CRA, those are things you gotta catch.
And then the AE log, the PI didn't sign and date it. It's just one.
For one subject. Oh yeah, there's only one subject for this.
Yeah, but that's one log.
Adverse event log.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. AE.
Financial disclosure. I know we talked about they've got to all be signed. I was kind of confused in that particular study. The financial disclosure forms were all being signed at different dates, and for me, I thought they were being signed after the study had already started.
Yeah, it can, but you still have to get one.
I thought you're supposed to do it prior to the study.
Well, no, because if you have a new staff member, let's say the study started, okay?
Oh, maybe it was.
And now you have a new sub-I that just joined.
Okay.
They can sign. At that date.
That's true.
They can sign. They're supposed to sign at study startup if you're on 1572 and you're at the SIV. But if, let's say, a staff member is added after when the study's already going on, and a new staff member comes on, like a sub-investigator, they can sign it at that time.
Okay.
And that'll be something a monitor has to look at. Who's the new delegation log? Yeah. Are they on the 1572? Did they sign the financial disclosure form? The sites, when they're busy, they don't remember to do this.
So when you add a new person and they have to sign a new form, FDA financial disclosure form, and you have to go add them onto the log, delegation log, and then you have to go add them to the 1572.
Right, but you don't add them.
I mean, the site.
Yeah.
Not us, but the site, the coordinator goes back and adds. Is it an amended 1572?
No, it's a brand new template.
They have to do a brand new each
the old
time.
one, yeah.
Okay.
Because it has to be wet ink, signed and dated by the PI each time it's changed. And that gets sent to the sponsor, that gets sent to the trial master file, that goes with the FDA, that goes with the IRB.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think the IRB gets it too.
Yeah, because it's a 1572.
Yeah, the IRB gets it.
Okay, I think. In this, when you're talking about SDR,
source data review,
yes, versus SDV, I think SDV will be easier to catch if the entry has been completed within specified timelines. Versus, are we talking about? First of all, what the data entry? We're talking about the whole, everything required per protocol, or anything specific. Because it says, has data entry been completed within the specified timelines?
Right.
So we're talking about what you need to do on baseline and blah, blah, blah as you go along? Or what data entry are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a good one. So at the site, okay? Let's say I'm the coordinator, you're the patient, you come in for this visit, okay? I have my source documents for your visit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say your visit 1. I did the consent. Okay, now I'm doing the visit. Okay, so I complete the assessment,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can go home, right? And now I've got to enter all this data in the EDC.
Okay.
Okay. Usually it's the coordinator or like an assistant,
Mm-hmm.
someone like Kobe,
Mm-hmm.
or the coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, it could be the PI, but they never do. So
Yeah, they're busy.
that's you're supposed to enter the data within 72 hours of the visit. Okay. Now some sites, they have maybe many visits that week.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they had 5 patients that day. And I just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, I finished with Mo, but I'll just enter this tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and I have more stuff, and then this eventually doesn't get entered. Okay, so that's bad for the site because they don't get paid. And it's bad for the sponsor and CRA because they can't do any SDV. So that's when the CRA would call the site, or the in-house CRA. That's
Okay.
one thing they do.
So.
They email, hey, you haven't entered data,
Mm-hmm.
or there's been open queries for like 82 days, or like 100 days open queries. Like they'll get involved. In-house series.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something you can do as well, like right away.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're more than qualified to do that. I think you can be a CRA today. I just think you need to start in one of those roles
Mm-hmm.
first. But I mean, just knowing you for like this week, I think you can do it.
I'm learning.
You have the skill set.
I
mean, the findings you found
That's
are.
like John was like, I have the perfect job for you.
Oh, that's right. I talked to him today.
Oh, is that
He called
my cousin in-law?
from Dallas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
He called.
who.
He called with
Oh, you know him?
his brother, Kelvin.
Oh.
Kelvin wants to consider opening a site.
Ah.
I should stop recording. But yeah,